My name is Hannah Reed, and I'm 38 years old. 22 years ago, my parents threw me out after I became pregnant during my sophomore year of high school. I was 16, standing in the October rain with one duffel bag, while my mother pointed toward the street and told me I was no longer her daughter. That same night, they had legal papers prepared cutting me out of the family and rejecting any child I might have. I kept those papers. I kept every piece of proof. For 22 years, my family acted as if I had disappeared. They told people I had gone overseas and used the reputation they had built for more than half a century to cover up what they had done to me. Then, last week, they appeared at my home. They were smiling, desperate, and determined to meet the grandson they had been bragging about to 180 of their most influential friends. They offered me $300,000 for one evening. There was only one problem. The grandson they had promised everyone did not exist, and what they discovered instead threatened to destroy everything they had spent 52 years protecting. Boise, Idaho, October 2004. I was 16, a sophomore at St. Agnes Academy, and the youngest child of Martin and Judith Reed. From the outside, our family looked flawless. My father owned a respected real estate law firm downtown, Reed Calder Legal, which he had opened in 1984. My mother had served as president of the Parent-Teacher Association for 3 straight years. Every Sunday, we sat in the first pew at Cedar Ridge Fellowship Church, wearing outfits she had chosen the night before. But there was a clear ranking inside our family, and I understood it before I was old enough to explain it. My brother Caleb was 24 and finishing his 4th year of medical school. He was the child my parents proudly presented to everyone. He would carry the Reed name forward. My sister Mara was 21 and studying elementary education. She was beautiful, agreeable, and never challenged anything our parents said. Then there was me. My mother once called me the unexpected one. She had been 35 when I was born, 7 years after she believed she was finished having children. I always felt that she blamed me for interrupting the life she had planned. The signs were small but impossible to miss. The framed family pictures in our living room rarely included my school portraits. Dinner conversations centered on Caleb's hospital rotations or Mara's classroom placement. When I mentioned making the honor roll, my father would glance up and say, "That's good, Hannah," before turning back to Caleb. I learned not to ask for much. I tried not to take up space. My father had a phrase he repeated at nearly every gathering. A family name takes years to build and only one mistake to ruin. At the time, I didn't realize how much those words would come to define my life, or how quickly he would decide that I was the mistake. I met Jonah Price in the downtown public library. To everyone else, it was just a library. To me, it was the only place where no one compared me with my brother and sister or reminded me of what I was supposed to become. I went there several afternoons a week. I told my parents I was studying, but mostly I went because I could breathe there. Jonah attended Franklin High, the public school my parents pretended was beneath notice. He was 18 and worked evenings at his uncle's muffler shop. He had the gentlest expression I had ever seen. One afternoon in late September, he found me crying in the biography section. My mother had forgotten to collect me from school for the 2nd time that month. He pulled out the chair across from mine and asked, "Are you all right?" It had been a long time since anyone had asked me that, and actually waited for an answer. We kept our relationship hidden for about 7 weeks. Jonah was patient with me. He never made me feel like a burden or an embarrassment. Around him, I felt like I mattered. On September 27, 2004, I took a pregnancy test in the restroom of a highway diner a couple of miles from school. 2 pink lines appeared. My hands shook so badly that I nearly dropped it. When I told Jonah, he didn't run. He didn't blame me or start talking about excuses. He held both of my hands and said, "We'll work it out together. You're not facing this by yourself." I wanted to believe him. Part of me did. But I knew my parents. I knew exactly what frightened them. Their first concern would not be whether I was safe. It would be what people would say. I decided to tell them over dinner. I had no idea it would be the last time I ever sat at that table. It was Saturday, October 30th, 2004, a little after 7 in the evening. The roast chicken had been cooked too long, and I remember staring at it while my father complained about a property dispute and my mother worked out the guest list for the church's winter fundraiser. Finally, I said, "There's something I need to tell all of you." The conversation stopped. My parents looked at me. Caleb had come home for the weekend, and Mara was visiting from college. I was about 8 weeks pregnant. I couldn't hide it much longer. "I'm having a baby." My mother's fork struck the plate. My father remained completely still. "Who is the father?" he asked. His voice was cold. "Someone from your school? Someone we know?" "His name is Jonah Price. He goes to Franklin High." My mother stared at me. "You've been seeing a boy from that school?" "He's a good person," I said. "He comes from a decent family." My father interrupted. "What does his father do?" "He lives with his uncle. Jonah works at an auto shop." No one spoke for several seconds. I counted 9. Then my father stood up. "You are not having this child." "Martin," my mother began. "He will not ruin everything we've built," my father said. He looked at me as if I were a problem he had just decided to remove. "If you continue with the pregnancy, you are no longer part of this family." Less than 2 hours later, I was outside with my bag while rain soaked through my sweater. My mother was the one who opened the door and directed me away from the house. Caleb and Mara watched from an upstairs window. Neither came down. I walked to a gas station on Alder Street and used the payphone to call Jonah. My fingers were shaking so badly I could barely press the buttons. He answered almost immediately. "Hannah, what happened?" "They put me out." 25 minutes later, his uncle's pickup pulled into the lot. Jonah jumped out before it had fully stopped, took off his jacket, and wrapped it around me while I cried against him. "I'm here," he kept saying. "I'm not leaving you." We had no real plan. Between us, we had $240, an old truck with unreliable brakes, and nowhere to sleep. That was when June Alvarez stepped in. She lived 4 houses down from my parents. She was 64, retired from teaching elementary school, and the only person on the street who never acted as if my father owned the entire neighborhood. She had seen me in the rain from her window. She had watched long enough to understand what had happened. When I knocked on her door close to 10 that night, she didn't ask me to explain. "You can stay here," she said, "for as long as you need." Jonah and I remained in her spare room for 11 days. Then he found us a small studio in Spokane, above a laundromat, for $510 a month. The place smelled strongly of detergent, but it was ours. My parents had their attorney prepare legal documents the night they threw me out. I knew because 4 days later, my father mailed me a certified copy. He even required my signature, as though I were confirming receipt of a business agreement. The document stated that Hannah Elise Reed surrendered every claim to the Reed family estate. It also said the family had no financial or moral responsibility for me or for any dependent I might have. I kept that document. I have had it for 22 years. Nora Elise Price was born on June 18, 2005, at Riverbend Medical Center in Spokane. She weighed 6 pounds 11 ounces. She had her father's brown eyes and my stubborn chin. When she entered the world crying, I remember thinking that it was good. Let her make noise. Let her take up room. No one would convince her that she was too much. The first 6 years were about getting through one day at a time. Jonah worked double shifts at a repair shop on the north side of Spokane while I completed my GED. After that, I took community college classes 2 at a time, working them around Nora's schedule. We ate plenty of noodles and day-old bread from the bakery nearby. I learned to repair clothes instead of replacing them and stretched every dollar until there was nothing left to stretch. When Nora was born, I mailed my parents an announcement. They never answered. For her first birthday, I sent a photograph. Again, nothing. After her second birthday, I stopped sending anything. Jonah and I never married. We always told ourselves we would have a proper wedding when we could afford one, when life became less chaotic. That day kept moving farther away. On January 27, 2011, a concrete truck went through a red light on Division Street. Jonah was driving home after an overnight shift. The officer who came to my apartment told me Jonah had died at the scene. He was 26 years old. Nora was 5. The life insurance policy from his job paid $15,000. That was everything. I was 22, raising a 5-year-old alone, with $15,000 and no one to call. I could have stopped there. I didn't. Even while Jonah was alive, I had taken small interior design jobs. I decorated apartments for neighbors who couldn't afford a professional and helped real estate agents prepare homes for sale. People told me I had an eye for making small places feel comfortable. After Jonah died, I worked constantly because I had no other choice. In 2014, I met Rochelle Mercer at a design workshop held by Inland Northwest Community College. Rochelle was 54 and had recently retired as the creative director of a regional design firm. She was looking for a new project. For reasons I still don't completely understand, she chose me. After reviewing my portfolio, she said, "You have real ability. It's rough, but it's there. Let me help you turn it into something solid." 2 years later, with Rochelle's guidance and a $60,000 small business loan that I was denied twice before receiving, I opened Northline Interiors. Our first office was a converted storage room inside a shared workspace. By 2020, I had 9 employees and revenue of $1.4 million. In February 2024, Spokane Life magazine published a feature about me titled, "From Teen Mother to Design Founder, Hannah Reed's Second Life." The reporter spent 3 days asking about my pregnancy, being rejected by my parents, losing Jonah, and building a business from nothing. I told her almost everything, except my parents' names and the city where they lived. I wasn't protecting them. I was protecting Nora from strangers trying to connect her to people who had never wanted her. By 2026, Northline Interiors had 24 employees and annual revenue of $4.8 million. I had an office overlooking downtown Spokane. Nora was 21 and a junior at Northwest State University, where she studied psychology. She was intelligent, outspoken, and stronger than I had ever been at her age. For 22 years, no one from the Reed family contacted us. Then, on Tuesday, October 20th, 2026, at 7:13 in the evening, I came home from a client meeting. I had just secured a $900,000 contract to renovate a tech investor's riverfront house, and I was still thinking about flooring and lighting when I turned onto my street. A dark green Volvo with Idaho plates was parked near my driveway. I stopped in the car and watched 2 people standing at my front door. The man had gray hair and a rounded back now. The woman still held herself rigidly, as if any movement might disturb the perfect image she had spent her life protecting. Martin and Judith Reed, my parents. I had not seen either of them in 22 years. For a moment, I considered driving away. I could have gone to a hotel, called Nora, and acted as if the people at my door weren't there. But I was 38 years old. I owned a company. I had built a life without them. So I got out of the car and walked toward the house. My father spoke first. "Hannah, you look..." He stopped and surveyed my coat, my bag, and the house. "What have you been doing with yourself?" My mother stepped closer. Her face was lined now, and her carefully colored hair no longer made her look as young as she wanted. "We know about your son," she said. "We know you have a boy." I looked at her without answering. "We'd like to meet him," my father said. "We want to repair the family." The absurdity of it almost made me laugh. They had spent 22 years acting as though I had died. Now they were standing outside my home asking about a grandson they had never tried to find. A grandson who did not exist. Still, I let them inside. I wanted to understand what had brought them there after all this time. My father sat in the living room as though he were inspecting a property. He studied the floors, the built-in shelves, and the artwork on the walls. My mother sat stiffly on the edge of the sofa with her hands clasped in her lap. "You're here because of the anniversary," I said. My father gave a small smile. 52 years. The celebration is on October 31st at the Grand Cascades Hotel. We're expecting 180 guests. Your guest list isn't my concern. The mayor will attend, my mother said. Pastor Cole, the chamber board, several people from the church. What does that have to do with me? My parents exchanged a look. There have been questions, my father said, about you, about what happened all those years ago. Some people remember that we had another child, my mother added. They've started asking where you went. We've always told them you moved overseas, my father said. But people have become more persistent. So you want me to appear at the party and prove that everything is fine? We need your son, my mother replied firmly. We've spoken about him. He represents the next generation of the Reed family. The room seemed to change around me. Who told you I have a son? My father waved toward the coffee table. That magazine article. It mentioned your child and your company. You've done more with your life than we expected. More than we expected. He said it as though my entire adulthood had been an exam they assumed I would fail. And if I don't cooperate? My father's mouth tightened. He opened his briefcase and pulled out a blank check. We're prepared to make this worth your time. He placed it in front of me. $300,000. Bring your son, remain at the celebration for 2 hours, take a few photographs, and then you can go back to your life. My mother nodded as if she were offering me a sensible business arrangement. $300,000 for 22 years of silence. We're also willing to restore your place in the family trust, she said. She lowered her voice as if she were sharing a secret. The estate is worth approximately $4.1 million. You would receive the same portion as Caleb and Mara. I thought about the cramped apartment above the laundromat. I thought about working while Nora slept in a playpen behind the counter of a cafe because childcare cost more than I earned. I thought about every year I spent building a life while my parents lived comfortably and told everyone I had left the country. And if I refuse? I asked. My father's face hardened. We would rather not involve your son directly, but if necessary, we can contact him ourselves and explain the family history. The threat was carefully worded, but I understood it. You want to reach out to my child and tell him your version of what happened? We're trying to restore the family, my mother said, spreading her hands. Isn't that what you always wanted? Before I could answer, I heard footsteps on the stairs. Mom, is something wrong? Nora appeared at the bottom step with a psychology textbook in her hand. She wore sweatpants and a Northwest State sweatshirt, and her dark hair was tied back carelessly. My mother stood up. Confusion crossed her face, followed by calculation, and then something close to panic. Who is that? She asked. This is Nora. I moved slightly in front of my daughter. My father stared at her. Your daughter? Your granddaughter, I said. His voice broke. But the article said a child. We were told. You assumed it was a boy. Nora looked from me to my parents. The realization reached her before I could say anything else. These are the grandparents who put you out when you were pregnant with me, aren't they? My mother flinched. It wasn't that simple. Which part wasn't simple? Nora asked. Throwing a 16-year-old into the rain? Or pretending for 22 years that she had never existed? My father tried to interrupt. Young woman. Don't call me that, Nora said. I'm the grandchild you never wanted to meet. I'm the person you tried to erase before I was even born. Her voice remained controlled, although her hands were shaking slightly. I know what happened. Mom told me the truth. I've seen the legal papers. I know you told people she went overseas. My parents had no response. Nora turned toward me. They came looking for the grandson they invented, didn't they? I nodded. She faced them again. They wanted someone to display. Yes. Nora gave them a thin smile. Then they're going to be disappointed. My father recovered first. I could almost see him reorganizing the situation in his head. "A granddaughter can work," he said carefully. "We can adjust the story." "Adjust it to what?" Nora asked. "The hidden granddaughter you kept secret for 21 years?" My mother's voice became pleading. "We could say you were studying abroad and only recently returned." "I was born in Spokane," Nora said. "I've never lived outside the country. I'm a university student. Do you even hear yourselves?" My father glanced at his watch. "The celebration is October 31st. We need your decision by the 26th. I stood. "You should leave." My mother collected her handbag. "Hannah, this could help heal the family. You could finally move beyond what happened." At the doorway, she turned back. "Don't let old pain ruin your future." I watched them walk to the Volvo. My father opened the passenger door for my mother, just as he had done countless times before, as though this had been an ordinary visit. When the car disappeared, Nora looked at me. "You're not actually thinking about going, are you?" I looked at the daughter they had rejected before meeting her. "No," I said, "but I'm not finished with them." Have you ever had someone abandon you and then return only when they needed something from you? If you had been standing in my place, what would you have done? Tell me in the comments. And if you want to hear what happened at the anniversary celebration, stay with me, because even I wasn't prepared for how far my parents' lie had spread. That night, after Nora went to bed, I took a fireproof box from the back of my closet. I hadn't opened it in years. Inside was the evidence of what my parents had done. The notarized disinheritance agreement was dated October 30th, 2004. It was signed by Martin James Reed and Judith Elaine Reed and witnessed by a notary named Paul Danner. I remembered my father sending it by certified mail a few days after I left. He had wanted proof that I had received it. The document was 3 pages long. Its wording was designed to leave no opening. It said that Hannah Elise Reed surrendered every right to the Reed estate, and that the family had no legal or moral responsibility for her or any dependent connected to her. Nora had been dismissed in a few legal words before she had even taken her first breath. I photographed every page, uploaded the images to secure storage, and made several copies. "Mom?" I looked up. Nora stood in the doorway with her arms folded around herself. I couldn't sleep either. She sat beside me and read the pages spread across the bed. When she finished, her eyes filled, though she refused to cry. "They really did this," she said quietly. "They actually decided you were nothing." "They did. What are you going to do with it?" I looked at my daughter and at the document that represented 22 years of deliberate rejection. "I don't know yet," I told her, "but they won't be able to deny it anymore." Nora considered that. "I may have an idea." The next morning, I called someone I had not spoken with in more than a year. June Alvarez answered on the 3rd ring. "Hannah, is that you?" "Hi, June. I hope I'm not calling too early. At my age, mornings are all relative. What's going on? You sound burdened." I told her about my parents' visit, the invented grandson, the anniversary event, and the $300,000 offer. When I finished, she was silent for a moment. "Those people," she finally said. 22 years and they're still exactly the same. "June, I need to ask you about that night, October 30th, 2004. Do you remember it?" Her voice changed. "I remember it as clearly as yesterday. I watched from my window. You were standing in the rain with that little bag beside you. I saw your parents' car leave." She paused. "I should have opened my door sooner. I've regretted that ever since. Do you still have the old security camera files?" There was a short pause. "You know I never throw things away. Teaching made me keep records of everything. Let me look." About half an hour later, an email arrived on my phone. The image was grainy, but there was no mistaking me. A 16-year-old girl standing outside a house in the rain. The timestamp showed 8:57 p.m. on October 30th, 2004. Part of the address was visible in the frame. When I called June back, she said, "That's you. That's the night they sent you away. Would you be willing to confirm it officially if I needed you to?" "Hannah, I've been waiting 22 years for someone to ask." "Whatever you need, I'll do it." I thanked her and ended the call. I had the legal papers and the footage. June was willing to stand behind both the image and her memory. Now I needed to decide what to do. That evening, I reread the article about my life. The Spokane Life profile was still online. It had been shared more than 16,000 times since it was published in February 2024. Nadia Park had titled it, "From Teen Mother to Design Founder, Hannah Reid's Second Life." It was nearly 2,800 words about grief, survival, and creating something after losing nearly everything. During the interview, I had been honest but careful. I said I was estranged from my family without mentioning their names or where they lived. I discussed becoming a mother at 16, but I never identified the parents who had forced me out. I wasn't protecting them. I was keeping strangers away from Nora. I began scrolling through the comments. People called the story inspiring. Some described being rejected by their own families. One person wrote that my life should become a film. Then I noticed a comment posted less than 2 weeks earlier. "Does anyone know whether she's connected to the Reid family in Boise? The lawyers? Someone at church mentioned it, and now I'm curious." That was how my parents had found me. A few minutes later, my phone rang. It was Rochelle. "I heard your parents have suddenly returned after 22 years of silence," she said. I laughed despite myself. "News travels quickly." "This is Spokane. Everything travels quickly. What do you need?" "Advice, maybe perspective." Rochelle's tone softened. "You've spent 22 years becoming yourself without their permission. Don't let 2 hours at their event undo that." She was right, but I was already thinking beyond the event. On Thursday, October 22nd, 2026, at 4:18 in the afternoon, my phone displayed an Idaho number I didn't recognize. I nearly ignored it. "Hannah, it's Caleb." I hadn't heard my brother's voice in 22 years. It sounded older and rougher now, like the voice of a 46-year-old man rather than the 24-year-old who had watched from an upstairs window while I stood outside. "Caleb, I know I have no right to call. I know you have every reason not to speak to me. But I need to tell you something before the celebration." "Then tell me." He let out an unsteady breath. "The grandson story came from Mom. She read the article 2 years ago, but she didn't actually read it. She saw the words child and successful business and decided you must have a son who was becoming some kind of entrepreneur. She made up a grandson. She created an entire story," Caleb said. "She told people at church and the chamber that there was a brilliant young man carrying on the Reid legacy. Dad went along with it. They've been using an imaginary grandson to impress people for months." I closed my eyes. Even after everything, their ability to invent a reality and expect everyone else to accept it still shocked me. "Why are you telling me now?" "Because I was a coward." His voice faltered. "I should have come downstairs that night. I should have said something. Mara and I have talked about it for years. We know we were wrong." He stopped, then continued. "We'll both be at the celebration. If you go, you won't have to face them alone." I didn't know how to respond. Caleb spoke for nearly another hour. He described the rules we had all lived under, the constant pressure to perform, the way our parents gave approval only when we obeyed, and how quickly they withdrew it when someone challenged them. "Mara has 2 children now," he said. "They're 7 and 10. She's terrified they'll grow up feeling the way we did, always wondering whether they're good enough." "Why didn't you contact me?" There was a long pause. "I almost did 6 years ago. I found your number through the company website. I called 8 times and hung up before the call connected." "Why?" because speaking to you would have meant admitting what I allowed to happen. I wasn't ready. What changed? You changed it, he said. Seeing Mom and Dad go to your house and demand a grandson who isn't real. Watching them try to buy you so you could stand beside them in a photograph. He exhaled. If I stay silent now, I'll spend the rest of my life knowing I failed you twice. I thought about the Caleb I remembered, the brother who used to play board games with me when our parents attended charity dinners, the one who had taught me to ride a bicycle in the backyard. There's something else, he said. The party will include a family tribute. Pastor Cole arranged for it to be live-streamed through the church. There will be 180 people there, and who knows how many watching from home. Thank you for warning me. What are you going to do? I'm not certain yet, I said, but I'm starting to see the answer. The next morning, Friday, October 23rd, my father called. This time, he didn't bother with small talk. Hannah, we're almost out of time. The celebration is next Saturday. The $300,000 and your full place in the trust are our final offer. I've spoken with Caleb. The line went quiet. He told me about the grandson you've been presenting to people, the one you invented after misreading an article. That's not. You may have exaggerated some details, my father said. You invented a whole person. You've spent months telling people about a successful grandson who doesn't exist. Hannah, I don't like the way you're speaking to me. What exactly are you offering? Money so I'll act in front of your friends? A place in a trust you use legal papers to remove me from? You have no right to judge us, he snapped, after everything we're offering. You're not offering me anything. You're trying to purchase my silence so your lie will look real. His anger came through clearly. You destroyed this family, he said. You brought shame on all of us. I was 16, pregnant and frightened. I needed my parents. Instead, you put me outside and spent 22 years telling people I had gone away. If you refuse to attend, you will never get another chance to belong to this family. You said that 22 years ago, I replied, and I built a better life without you than I ever could have built with you. We'll see about that. He ended the call. I sat in my office with the phone still in my hand. The party was 8 days away. There would be 180 people in the room and a live stream reaching people beyond it. I was done allowing my parents to control the story. That evening, I sat at the dining table with Nora and Rochelle. They want you to perform, Rochelle said. They want you to appear, smile, and make their version of the past look believable. They want to use you as proof that they're respectable, Nora added. They've always treated you like something to manage instead of someone to love. I looked at the two people who had become my family. I'm going to the celebration. Nora looked up sharply. Not to give them what they want, I continued, to give myself what I need. I showed them the photographs of the disinheritance papers, June's security footage, and the article. For 22 years, they've controlled what people believe about me. They said I left the country. They invented a grandson. They erased me. You want to put yourself back into the story, Rochelle said. I want to tell the truth in front of the people whose approval matters most to them, on their stage, during their live stream. I paused, not because I want to humiliate them, because I'm finished helping them pretend I never existed. I'm coming with you, Nora said. They need to see who you are, I told her. They need to see me, she answered, not the imaginary grandson. I reached for her hand. Are you sure? I've known my whole life that they chose their reputation over you and over me because of you. I'm sure. That night, I called Caleb. Do you still mean it when you say I won't be alone? Mara and I talked. We're ready. Then I need one thing. Don't warn Mom and Dad. Don't tell them I'm bringing Nora. We won't. I looked out at the Spokane skyline. In a little more than a week, My parents were going to learn the difference between a family they could display and a family they had actually earned. Saturday, October 31st, 2026, at 6:52 p.m. The Grand Cascades Hotel ballroom looked exactly like something my parents would have chosen. Glass light fixtures hung above cream-colored tablecloths, and the floral arrangements probably cost more than my first month's rent in Spokane. 180 guests stood around with champagne glasses, discussing investments and golf. Nora stood beside me near the entrance. She wore a simple dark green dress. I had chosen a charcoal suit, professional, plain, and impossible to overlook. "You all right?" she whispered. "I'm about to walk into my parents' anniversary party and tell 180 people they've lied about me for 22 years. I squeezed her hand. "I'm scared." That wasn't what I asked. I looked at her. She had grown up knowing that her grandparents had rejected us, yet she had never allowed that fact to make her bitter. "Yes," I said. "I'm ready." We went inside. At the far end of the room, a platform had been arranged for the speeches. A small camera crew was preparing the church's live stream. The public broadcast had already begun, and comments were appearing on the monitor beside the stage. My parents stood at the front, surrounded by guests. My mother wore pale gold silk. My father had chosen a navy suit. They looked pleased with themselves, like people convinced they had successfully managed every detail. They hadn't seen us yet. Then the whispers began. "Is that the woman from the magazine? Wasn't she living overseas? That's Martin Reed's daughter." My mother looked toward the entrance. Her smile stopped. Her hand tightened around my father's arm. He followed her gaze and lost his place in the speech. 52 years of marriage have taught me that family is the foundation of everything," he had been saying. "Judith and I built our life around family, service, and faith." His words came through the speakers and into the live stream. On the monitor, people were typing messages about what a wonderful couple my parents were. My father tried to continue. "As I was saying, family has always—" I started toward the platform. The guests moved out of my way. No one made a scene, but everyone understood that something was about to happen. Nora walked beside me with her head held high. Caleb and Mara appeared near the side of the crowd. They didn't try to stop me. "Hannah," my father said through the microphone. His voice had tightened. "What a surprise. We didn't know you were coming." I climbed the 3 steps to the platform. The camera followed. I could feel the attention of everyone in the room and the unseen viewers watching the broadcast. "Hello, Dad." Before he could react, I took the microphone from his hand. "Hello, everyone. My name is Hannah Reed. Many of you don't know me, but I am Martin and Judith Reed's youngest daughter." I let the statement settle. "I'm the daughter they told you moved overseas 22 years ago." No one spoke. I didn't move overseas. On October 30th, 2004, my parents learned that I was pregnant. I was 16. That night, they put me out of their house, told me I was no longer part of the family, and had legal papers prepared to make sure I could never claim anything from them. Someone in the audience gasped. The comments on the monitor began moving too quickly to read. For 22 years, they told people I had left the country. For 22 years, they acted as though I didn't exist. I reached into my bag and pulled out the notarized document. This is what my father mailed me after he threw me out. It says I gave up all rights to the family estate and that the family had no responsibility for me or any dependent connected to me. I held the document toward the camera. The dependent mentioned there is my daughter, Nora. I pointed toward the edge of the stage. The granddaughter my parents have never met. Then I faced the crowd again. The grandson they've been describing to you for months is not real. They created him after reading a magazine article about me and assuming that my child had to be a boy. My father reached for the microphone. "Hannah, this is not the place." "When is the place, Dad?" I kept the microphone away from him. When is the right time to tell the truth? He had no answer. You came to my house last week and offered me $300,000 to bring a fictional grandson here so your story would look believable. You wanted to pay me to make your lie convincing. I turned toward the guests and the camera. I didn't come here for the money. I came because I'm done allowing myself to be erased. Pastor Cole stepped forward. Martin, is this true? My father looked at him but said nothing. My mother began to cry. I had seen Judith cry only once during my childhood, at her mother's funeral. Now tears ran down her face and damaged the careful makeup she had applied that evening. Pastor Cole repeated himself. I asked whether your daughter is telling the truth. My father looked around the room at the mayor, the chamber members, the church elders, and all the people whose respect he had guarded for decades. He searched for an explanation that might make what he had done sound acceptable. Finally, he said, It was a difficult period. We made choices we believed were necessary. You threw me out because I was pregnant, I said. Your reputation mattered more to you than your child. Caleb stepped onto the platform. Mara followed him. They stood beside me. She's telling the truth, Caleb said. Mara and I were there that night. We watched from the upstairs window while our parents sent our 16-year-old sister into the rain. Mara's voice shook, but she continued. We never stopped them. We never told anyone what happened. That was our failure. The room erupted in whispers. People pulled out their phones. Some began recording. Mayor Denise Carter headed toward the exit. I pointed toward a silver-haired woman seated near the back. June Alvarez was our neighbor. She saw me outside that night. She has the time-stamped footage. June stood. I watched that child remain in the rain for 8 minutes before she left, she said. I gave her a place to sleep. The Reed family never once asked where she went. The live stream comments became impossible to follow. People were calling the story unbelievable. Others were criticizing my parents. Someone contacted the local news. Can you imagine watching a reputation collapse in front of the very people it was built to impress? My parents had spent 52 years creating that image. It took only a few minutes of truth to break it. If you believe people should be held responsible for the harm they cause, tap like and keep watching, because I still had one more thing to say before I left. I gave the microphone back to my father. He accepted it automatically, still looking stunned. I didn't come here to destroy you, I told him quietly. I came here because I'm done being invisible. Then I faced the guests again. I'm not asking for pity. I don't need it. 22 years ago, I left that house with almost nothing. Today, I own a design company in Spokane with 24 employees and nearly $5 million in yearly revenue. My daughter is a university student, and we built our lives without help from the Reed family. I looked straight at the camera. I'm not here for revenge. I'm here because my parents tried to buy my silence last week. They offered me $300,000 to help them maintain a lie. They deserve to face the consequences in front of the community they valued more than their own children. Nora climbed onto the platform and took the microphone. My name is Nora, she said. I'm the granddaughter they never wanted. She looked at my parents. I'm 21 years old. I've always known that my grandparents chose their reputation over my mother, and because of that, over me. Her voice remained firm. You could have known me. You could have come to birthdays, school events, and graduation. You could have watched me grow up. Her voice broke slightly. You made the decision not to. You don't get to pretend that decision was our fault. Nora returned the microphone and stepped down. I followed her. Behind us, the ballroom descended into confusion. At the doors, I stopped and turned around. One final thing. My voice carried over the noise. I'm not going to sue you. I'm not going to challenge the will, and I don't want your money. I'm keeping the papers you signed because they remind me of who you chose to be. I'm not keeping them as a weapon. My father looked up, confused. He had probably expected demands, lawyers, and a fight over the estate. But if you spread another lie about me or my daughter, if you contact Nora without her permission, or if you invent another story for your friends, I will release every piece of evidence I have." I lifted the document slightly. "I have the disinheritance agreement, the time-stamped footage, and witnesses." I looked toward June. "And now I have 180 people who heard this conversation." Rochelle appeared beside me. "Ready?" she asked. "Yes." As we walked out, I heard Pastor Cole speaking behind us. "Martin, Judith, I think we need to have a private conversation tonight." Outside, the October air was cold. For the first time in 22 years, I felt as if I could finally breathe. "Mom," Nora said quietly, "did we do the right thing?" I thought about the frightened teenager I had been, standing in the rain with a bag at my feet. I thought about the years spent surviving, working, and building a life my parents had assumed I could never create. "We told the truth," I said. "We made our boundary clear. We let them deal with the results of their choices." I pulled her into my arms. "That isn't revenge. It's justice." "What happens now?" I looked back toward the hotel. "Now we go home." The consequences began within hours. By midnight, a clip from the live stream had been shared 923 times. By the next morning, that number had more than tripled. Someone uploaded the footage to a public video site where it reached 55,000 views in its first day. 61 guests left the celebration within 25 minutes of my departure. Caleb called me Sunday morning and told me what had happened after we left. Mayor Carter left without saying goodbye to my father. Lydia Brooks from the church board followed her. The Rutledge family, who owned several auto dealerships, apologized to Caleb on their way out. "They said they were sorry they had never questioned the story," he told me. "They said they should have asked where you were." That Sunday afternoon, the Idaho City Ledger ran a short article with the headline, "Anniversary Celebration Ends in Family Revelation." The article was restrained. The comments were not. People wrote that they had attended church with my parents and never knew. One person said my father had prepared their estate documents and asked what kind of man rejected his own child. By Monday, Martin had resigned as an elder at Cedar Ridge Fellowship. The bulletin said he was leaving for personal reasons, but nobody misunderstood why. On Thursday, the chamber board announced that it would review its membership standards at the next meeting. My father's name was mentioned directly. Meanwhile, I was back in Spokane answering business emails. 9 new potential clients contacted Northline Interiors that week. They had read the magazine article 2 years earlier and only connected it with me after seeing the video. Some consequences destroy things, others reveal what was already there. Mine did both. The following Thursday, Nadia Park from Spokane Life called. She was the reporter who had written my profile. "Hannah, your video is everywhere. We'd like to write a follow-up about the woman who confronted her past. Would you consider it?" "I need some time to think." "Of course, but the response has been enormous. People are recognizing their own experiences in your story." She was right. Our general inbox filled with messages that had nothing to do with design. People wrote about being cut off by parents, being treated as invisible, and finally finding the courage to speak. One person said the video had convinced her to call her brother after 12 years of silence. Another said she had also become a teenage mother, and that my story made her feel less alone. Someone else wrote, "You showed me that success can be a way of surviving people who wanted you to fail." That Saturday, Caleb and Mara came to Spokane for the first time in 22 years. We sat in my living room, the same room where my parents had tried to purchase my silence, and talked for 6 hours. Caleb told me about the guilt he had carried. Mara cried when she met Nora. Their children, 7 and 10, played in the backyard while the adults tried to rebuild a relationship that had been damaged long before any of them knew how to name it. "I'm sorry," Caleb told me. "I know that doesn't cover 22 years." "No," I said, "it doesn't. But it's a beginning." Nora watched from the doorway as her mother's siblings finally became real people in her life. It wasn't simple or perfect, but it was real. 1 week after the celebration, my phone rang with an Idaho number. It was my mother. "Hannah." Her voice sounded smaller than I had ever heard it. "I'm not calling to apologize," she said. "I don't know how to apologize for what we did." "Then why are you calling?" She was quiet for a long time. "I watched the live stream. I've watched it 9 times. Another pause followed. "I keep looking at your face while you're speaking. I'm trying to find my daughter in it, the daughter I sent into the rain." I said nothing. "Your father isn't doing well," she continued. "The church, the chamber, his colleagues, everyone looks at him differently now. He doesn't know how to handle it. I didn't do this to punish either of you. I know that now." Her voice cracked. "You did it because you had to stop pretending. We left you no other choice. Why did you call me, Mom?" The silence lasted even longer. "Because I wanted to hear your voice. I realized I might never hear it again." She began crying. When Nora stood on that stage and said she had spent her entire life knowing we didn't want her, I couldn't breathe. I closed my eyes. "I'm not ready to forgive you," I said. "I may never be ready, but I'm not going to hang up on you either. That's more than I deserve." "Yes," I said, "it is." We remained connected for another minute without speaking. Then she said goodbye. She didn't ask me to give her another chance. She didn't demand anything. Maybe that was progress. Or maybe it was simply the beginning of a very long road. Thanksgiving 2026 was the first time my dining table had ever been completely full. The table had come from an estate sale 3 years earlier, and I had refinished it myself. That day, it held 13 people. Nora sat on my right. Rochelle sat on my left. June had come from Boise again and was teaching one of the children how to fold napkins. Caleb carved the turkey while his wife arranged the side dishes. Mara's children argued over who would light the candles. My parents were not there. We had not reached that point, and perhaps we never would. But as I looked around the table, I realized I had spent 22 years grieving a family that had never truly wanted me. Now I was surrounded by people who had chosen to be there. They wanted to know me as I really was, not as an image, not as proof of their respectability, and not as a prop. Nora stood with a glass in her hand. "I wrote something for Mom," she said. She unfolded a piece of paper. "When I was little, I used to ask why I didn't have grandparents like the other children. Mom always told me the truth. She said they made a choice, and that choice had nothing to do with my worth." She looked at me. It took me years to understand that. Now I know that everything I am came from the fact that Mom refused to let their decision define us. She raised her glass. "To the family we choose and build, not only the family we're born into." Everyone lifted their glasses. Later, after dinner was over and people were spread throughout the house with coffee, I stood at the kitchen window. Nora came to stand beside me. "You okay?" I looked at her and at the life I had built from everything I once believed I had lost. "Yes," I said, "I really am." If you're still listening, I want to leave you with this. 22 years ago, I was a frightened 16-year-old standing in the rain and watching my parents' car disappear. I thought my life had ended. I thought there was nothing left for me. I was wrong. I had Jonah for the years I was given with him. I had June, who opened her door when she had no obligation to do so. I had Rochelle, who saw ability in a young mother with almost nothing except determination. I had Nora, who learned the truth and chose strength instead of bitterness. And eventually, I had myself, the version of me who stopped waiting for permission to exist. If your family makes you feel as if you have to become smaller to be accepted, or if they make your value depend on their approval, I understand. I have lived through that. But I know this now. You do not need their validation to know your worth. Boundaries are not revenge. Sometimes they are how you survive. And sometimes the family you build becomes stronger than the one you were born into. My parents still haven't truly apologized. Martin has said very little since the celebration. Judith calls occasionally, and I answer when I'm able. Caleb and Mara are trying. We are all trying. But I'm not waiting for my parents to become different people before I live my life. I'm living the life I built, the life I earned, and the life that belongs to me. It isn't a perfect ending. It's a real one. Real endings don't need applause. They need the truth. Thank you for listening. If this story made you feel less alone, share it with someone who may need to hear it, and subscribe for more stories like this. Everyone deserves to be seen.